All right, so I guess we don't usually do this, but welcome to another edition of the Falcon Paladin Hour. Special guest ZombieGrub here with us today. Very happy to have here with us. And my first question is about time zones. All right, so we've discussed this on the podcast before. I just wanted to get your take on this really, really quick. I have this idea. Every single person in the world uses the same time zone, right? So when I say 1800 hours, it's the same if you're in New York City. It's the same if you're in Sydney. Same if you're in Seoul. Same if you're in London. How do you think that would work? Would it work?
Wait, what? Like you would just, you would say 6 p.m. is like the middle of the night for Australians?
Yes, exactly. And 10 a.m. is like middle of the night for
It worked
Paris, right?
I'm pretty sure it worked pretty poorly. The amount of people who actually need to do time conversion, they have to worry about this stuff, are actually, I think, smaller than we remember when we get into esports or anything global. So
that's okay. So you're saying the amount of people inconvenienced by time zones is not enough to change it for them. There are more people that it wouldn't be worth it to try to mess up their routine and how they understand time.
yeah, and just like in general, like the whole idea that humans kind of needs to soak in that sunny D. And if you're you have to do everything at 6 p.m. in the middle of the night.
Yeah, see, I get that argument. Somicron has said, well, that means everyone's on the same schedule, and they have to all wake up at 7 a.m., which is 7 a.m. globally, which could be the middle of the night, which means, like you said, people don't get natural sunlight, which is bad for people. But I was thinking more along the lines of people do their normal work days, right? They still wake up when the sun rises and go to bed-ish when the sun sets. But just for me, I might wake up at 1 a.m. while the sun is rising, but it's still 1 a.m. everywhere on Earth, and people are just on their own schedules. Just the time is always the same for everybody.
You still have to take into account, like, what their time zone is, though. You still have to take into account that they'll be asleep during your 1 a.m.
Correct. And it doesn't help with syncing up work schedules, right? So, yeah, it's not like you can say, well, now we can have meetings at 1 p.m. because it's the same for everybody. You still have to factor in that some people are going to be off of work hours during that time.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I guess if you still have to factor that in, then it's basically like having to account for time zones.
I think so.
Somicron, what do you think?
No, I'm in complete agreement. It's a dumb idea.
All right. Well, on that note, it's 2 versus 1. I will graciously concede, and we will not change the global way we measure time. All right. Well, anyway, thanks for joining us again, ZombieGrub. I don't know. I just kind of wanted to get you on the podcast, talk about StarCraft, obviously, kind of talk about your experience with gaming in general. That's generally what we like to do when we get guests on the pod. We had Pig a while ago and kind of got his thoughts mostly about StarCraft, but about other things at the same time. One thing, as I was reading your Liquipedia page, one thing that really caught my eye, it's one of the first things there, is your first experience with StarCraft was playing StarCraft 64 with your 2 older brothers.
Yes, that's correct.
So that is accurate. Now, you eventually got the PC version later, apparently, years later.
Yeah.
What I'd like to know is, was your mind blown? What was your reaction when you first played StarCraft on the PC when you were so used to playing it on the N64?
Well, the thing is, I wasn't really like used to playing it on N64. This is years of a gap between me occasionally playing this game that my brothers like to play. No idea about its like popularity or anything, or that it was on the PC, and me getting on the PC like, I don't know, 6 years later, something like that. Like, I didn't go into it and being like, wow, this is so different than playing on N64, because I didn't really play on N64. I was a young kid, and
Okay.
I don't really remember it.
Yeah,
so.
no, that makes sense. So it's kind of like if I was playing something on the Commodore 64 as a kid because my friend had it, didn't play it a whole lot, and then it was ported to like Nintendo or something. I wouldn't have the comparison necessarily. All right, I get that. So I guess a follow-up question would be, I guess when did you really start to enjoy StarCraft? Like when was it something that became something that you really liked playing?
I don't really remember, to be honest. It's just the first year or so of StarCraft 2 was a bit of a blur for me. Just never thought, I'd have to remember anything from it. It was just a game that I played. But Yeah, I obviously I knew it was a good game when I played the Brood War, but it just not really anyone to talk to. Warcraft 3 was more of what me and my friends played. So when StarCraft 2 was announced, like I picked it up because just, World of Warcraft, Blizzard had this name to it. And then probably as soon as I wanted to beat my brother, because I'm actually old enough to like learn strats and learn how to play video games, I went to YouTube and got interested in the way that you learn about StarCraft and the games about StarCraft. So I think I was like hooked and watching stuff every day, probably around mid 2011, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Who were some of the guys or casters you liked watching on YouTube? Or I guess not casters necessarily, but just personalities?
Yeah, they're gone now, so it kind of sucks from StarCraft anyways. But Force Strategy was really big. Now he's just Force Gaming. Still a big YouTuber. But he was StarCraft, and I watched a lot of that and joined his clan, like in the in-game. It was chat channel. And I was really, really quite active. It was always... you could always find someone to play against. So that was a big part of molding my continued interest in StarCraft. And then I would watch, I found Husky. I didn't really find HD, but I did remember Husky. And then there was also, I don't remember this guy's name. Oof, darn it. There's this really, he's kind of, I can't even think anything about his name right now. I just know he was on a team and he would do interviews and occasionally cast, and he kind of introduced me into the pro gaming scene. I always remembered his name. He was pretty popular, which then led me to watching like pro streams on Twitch. So I would always be really excited to go home and watch like Idra, for instance, and then find out that MLG was this thing that happened on the weekends, and it snowballed.
Yeah, no, that was my introduction as well. I had no idea that StarCraft had a pro gaming scene until I found Husky on YouTube. And that opened my eyes to this world, and I'm eternally grateful for that. All right, so when did you decide that you wanted to play Terran? Was there a seminal moment, or it was just progressive?
Well, I always played Terran, even in Brood War. It's the first campaign that you play, I guess, so it's naturally one that people start with. So I played it in Brood War, because my brothers played the other two races, and then it was again the introduction race. So I was playing Terran until like mid 2000, like later 2011 or something like that. And then I was like, Zerg seems really good. Idra was my my hero at the time, and just I like the mechanics of it. But I played that for what is now, looking back on it, probably like a year and a half at the most, and then I transferred over to Terran, because I really thought that Terran had more flexibility in build orders. And I think I was right. It just was really bad timing because it was like the introduction of the Broodlord Infestor era.
Right.
Yeah. But I stuck with Terran. It still appealed to me more than Zerg.
Yeah, fair enough. I really feel like a lot of people have that same story, where even if there is necessarily another race that's stronger, they will just stick with what appeals to them. I've been playing Zerg since back when StarCraft 1 was released, and it was just the concept of swarming always appealed to me. Even in times when Zerg wasn't necessarily super strong in the meta, I never considered switching. It was always going to be Zerg or bust. Just that feeling of being able to get a surround on an army, crash banelings in there and get ultras just eating up these Marines, just always was more fun to me than doing anything else with any of the other races. So totally understand that. So anyway, let's see. Where else do we want to go with this here? All right. So right now, it just seems like you're very busy. You're casting a lot. You're on Twitch all the time, which is always very, very fun to see. And right now, how do you feel the state? We asked this of Pig. How do you feel the balanced state of StarCraft is right now? Like, I'm not asking you to say that one race is OP, because obviously that's not true. And we know that the balance team works really hard at making sure that the races are as close as they can make them. But is there a particular strategy or a particular race that you feel like could use some tuning in a future balance patch?
Yeah, I do. I think that right now Terran is like legitimately struggling versus Protoss, and it's always, their argument isn't really about balance, because Broodlord Infestor was technically balanced, is always the go-to. It was a 50% win record. but it was because like TVP back then was perfectly balanced, but it was because it was 2-base Immortal all-in versus Brutal Infester. Like,
Right.
you either won with it or you lost with it. It was 50-50. And I mean, that was just a really boring way to play the game. So right now, even if Terrans do make it through groups and do have some decent games, I mean, you go back and watch the games, and it's exactly the stuff that everyone's complaining about design-wise. And that's what matters most, is how fun the game is to watch and to play and how many choices you have. And when Terran just, like, sits there, waits for the all-in, doesn't come, then they push out. So Protoss is sitting there waiting for the all-in to come, and then they push out if it doesn't. It's just, like, so boring. TV is just so boring right now. So I would like to see a change there, but I'm not sure exactly what would do to make it perfectly balanced.
Yeah, and that's always the question, right? You can say something feels unbalanced, but how exactly that needs to be changed is always the million-dollar question.
Yep.
I just remember Home Story Cup. There was a bunch of TVP there, and I had a subscriber who requested a long TVP, like 20, 25 minutes for me to cast. So I went and looked through the replay pack, and there was literally nothing longer than like 12 minutes at all, any of the TVPs during the entire tournament. So I went and watched a bunch of them, and it was a lot of... This was before the Cyclone change. This was when you could still reactor them out. And it was basically Terrans were proxying almost every time. It was they throw up a bunker, they'd bring some Cyclones over, do some pressure, bring a Banshee in next, bring a tank in next, and just this constant, basically 1 or 2 base pressure on Protoss. And either they won with it or they lost with it. But none of the games went into the late macro game. And that kind of felt like the Terran had a bit of an advantage there. And then Blizzard came in, nerfed the Cyclone's ability to be double pumped like that. And now suddenly it seems like Terran is at a disadvantage. So I'm wondering if maybe the Cyclone is the key here. Is there a way to make it a little bit better to where maybe it can do better against Protoss, whether you increase its HP or maybe you bring back the reactor? It's really hard to say.
Well, you don't want to really... I don't think you want to pin the hopes and dreams on the Cyclone being a good unit, because the Cyclone is ultimately a boring unit. So it's, in my opinion, better to have it at an underpowered... not, the go-to proxy thing like last year, and then work on redesigning other ways to play TVP, which is, centered around bio. The fun thing about TVZ is that you open up, somewhat safe. There's plenty of options for both sides to do all-ins and pressure, but then you also get these really strong mid-games where there's drops everywhere, and then positioning of the army, denial of creep spread at the same time that you're moving over there, and there's just so much going on all the time. And then eventually comes to a head. And TVP is just not the same. Terrans are way too scared to do any like heavy drop play. And then Protoss are designed to just sit there and defend until they get a big enough army. And that can only be so fun to watch if the other race isn't willing to actually put any pressure on. And you just watch them bulk up for 13 minutes. That's really boring stuff. So
what do you think dissuades Terrans from doing drop heavy play versus like what they do with Zerg?
It's doesn't get anything done usually. You have recall as an option. Blink Stalkers are rather strong at sniping those armored medevacs. And with the AoE capabilities of Protoss, as well as feedback, specifically from High Templars, it just doesn't seem like it's worth the committal of your units compared to their units. Like it's like the tunneling claws problem that almost became a problem in ZVZ, where it sucks that tunneling claws is so powerful, because if you send 4 roaches with tunneling claws to someone's base, they have to respond with actually 8 roaches, not the equal of 4, and it just creates that imbalance that makes it really harder to defend. That's what it feels like versus Protoss. It's like, well, I can commit 20 supply to that attack, but you only have to defend with, sometimes only 4 supply, like 2 High Templars kill everything.
You fly in there, your medevacs get feedbacked, and you're done. Yep.
Yeah. And with starport production being so expensive, and the good old choice eventually, especially nowadays, now that Colossus has really come back into play, the more you drop, the more you risk not being able to have both medevacs and Vikings. I mean, Tempests are now a better option, right? They can be maneuvered easier and can take out Liberators, which was that late game response doesn't really seem to work very much anymore. Even if you go right to Liberators and get that +2, and in 8 or 9 of them, the Protoss can match you and go right to Tempest, and Vikings against Protoss is just really it's just a really hard matchup. And regardless of the balance, it does often feel/look like when you watch the games that it doesn't take as much effort from the Protoss. Whether that not that's true is sometimes not important. I feel it's like if you look at someone just warp in 12 charge lots and you're like, well, that's really cool. It does devastating damage. It took a lot of skill. It doesn't look pretty.
And that is something Nathanius was making a point of watching WCS Winter last weekend was, man, you get warp in 12 charge lots with upgrades into the Terran base, and it is so hard to deal with. You have to bring back a large portion of your army to clean it out, which leaves your front door a little bit weaker. And then the majority of the Protoss Death Ball shows up, and then it's just a really tough situation the Terran players can find them in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, 24 Lings got dropped into your main. That's a lot easier to deal with as compared to those Zealots for sure.
Yeah, and the Warp Prism just being such an awesome tool. It doesn't cost gas, 20 minerals, indefinite warp-ins. It's, again, not, I'm not saying this from my own games where I suck. I know I suck. It's from watching the games, and is there that fun value there? Am I impressed when the Warp Prism skirts around the edge of the map and warps in 16 Zealots? Or am I impressed with, Raynor constantly poking in every 30 seconds with his Lings? And then finally catches the supply depots lowered. Like, the latter one is a lot more interesting.
So I've always kind of felt like Blizzard should balance StarCraft around what the professionals feel like is going on. If the pros are struggling against something, then yes, obviously there should be a change. I remember a balance patch, I want to say a year or two ago, right when the Hydralisk was made viable, and there was the ability to get out a big Hydra push against Protoss with both range and speed at about 12 minutes. And there was a tournament where every Zerg player went for that against every Protoss opponent that they faced, and it was so hard for Protoss to deal with. They tried Immortals, they tried rushing to Storm, they tried getting Colossus out. It just wasn't enough. And then immediately after that tournament was over, Blizzard was like, all right, done. We are changing this. This is obviously hard for our professional Protoss players to deal with. We don't want them to stop playing, obviously. And they went ahead and switched it up a little bit, changed the upgrades to, where you can't. What did they change? They split them, right? There was the one that gave you range and speed at the same time, and they just put them into two different ones.
Yeah, exactly. They unbuffed it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the thing. They were kind of going back and forth with that for a while, and it seems like they've settled on what they want to do with it now, where Hydras are in a decent spot. They're good. They can be dealt with. They can be responded to. And you don't have that 12-minute Hydra death ball showing up at your front door as Protoss and just ruining your day. So that is a good example, I guess, of that. So, but, wow, that was a really long intro to my question. But so what you're saying, though, is you feel like maybe changes should happen if the entertainment aspect has been damaged.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that's... I think that's, it's a balance thing. You obviously don't just make StarCraft as wacky as possible. You don't go down the Fortnite path, where they're, changing up their tournaments. They're changing up their games literally a day before huge tournaments, and then just, the reasoning is they don't really care about the pro scene. They care about the casual scene, and that's, we don't want to go that direction with it. We do want the game to be balanced and ultimately show the highest skill possible wins type deal. But I do think it is the most concerning. That's what has led to many of the drop-off periods of StarCraft 2, in my opinion, are the boring metas. The metas where you aren't doing very much. So, Broodlord Infestor, there was a waiting game. Terran would wait till their 3-base tank push and then try and then die. or they would Rax all in or something like that. And there was...
Swarm Host Mech.
Exactly.
Oh, Swarm Host Mech. Yeah.
There were some balanced periods. There was some, 50-50 on the win rates in those periods, but it wasn't a very good game. It wasn't very fun to watch. And I think even with everyone basically agreeing that wasn't fun to watch, you still had the pros do what they should, which is fight for their ability to win money and actually make a living off of this. They don't want Swarm Host to be nerfed necessarily, because then what if it makes them really underpowered? So there's always that balance between appealing to the pros and making sure it's all fair, but also appealing to the community that makes this like an esport to begin with, all the fans that watch it.
Yeah, that's a good point, because even if the pros all love the state of the game, if nobody's watching them, it's hard to make it an esport anymore. Yeah. Entirely fair. So I guess one matchup that I really am a fan of, and have been for a while now, is ZVP. I feel like the Zerg versus Protoss is one where, and I say this quite a bit in my cast, where I just feel like every unit from both races is viable. You can make anything. Sure, it's situation dependent, but there's really nothing I can think of that is just useless entirely in this matchup. And that's something I think that is maybe key to making a matchup interesting and fresh, is you can see different stuff in every ZVP, and all of it totally makes sense.
Yeah, although I sometimes feel like ZVP does get the same trap where like it is mostly the best to go into Stargate, into Immortal Pump, High Templars. We don't see a ton of Colossus series. Like it has, and all matchups will get those periods. It's just not much is happening. But we want to try to reduce the amount of opportunities that show themselves. So you're right that the best StarCraft is often how many options you have, how diverse it is. But hard to get there.
Hard to do. Yeah, 100% difficult. One thing I've always found interesting about your career in StarCraft is the time when you taught at NYU Intro to StarCraft after taking over for Axlav. So, that wasn't obviously, many, many years, a huge part of your life, but I have to imagine it has some effect, obviously. Is there one thing from that time that kind of stands out that you still remember today?
Yeah, I think the best thing that happened there was a ton of bad things because the travel was super terrible. But, the actual class itself, when I was finally there and teaching, was really a lot of fun. I think I did a great job appealing to, like, not just taking the opportunity to be like, yes, I get to teach everyone about esports, but to actually cater it to their degree, which was game design. And we had a really nice, like, open roundtable discussion around, like, one or two, classes before the last class, where I was just like, why would you make your game that you're designing an esport? Like, would you make it with esport in mind, esports in mind, and try and, like, make revenue off of that, or you just create a good game? And there is, like, a really, really lengthy, interesting discussion where everyone chipped in, and I think that was a lot of fun for them, and also makes the class important as opposed to just the freebie 4 points, whatever it was.
Yeah, so just getting in depth into the discussion, into the subject material, rather than people just showing up,
Yeah.
like you said, for the points, for the grade.
Yeah, because there were still, those 2 or 3 kids that they showed up, they had fun, they were active, but then they didn't do the homework. And it's like, it's so easy, dude. Like, you get to... The homework was literally, like, play 3 games and, like, write how it went down, I think. It was, like, a weekly assignment. Not even, like, 2 times a week or anything. It was weekly. And this kid, like, didn't do, like, 6 of them. So when he got a lower than expected grade, he actually messaged me, and I was like, well, to be fair, I've never graded anything before, but I looked up how to do it. I think I did it correctly, and you just didn't do the homework, dude. And he didn't have any response to that. But it's just, like, it's so stupid. Like, you could have gotten an A+ easily.
Yeah, just boot up the StarCraft, man. Jeez.
Just write about it. Like, this kid actually lately liked StarCraft. That was the nice thing about it, too, actually, was that everyone there, even if they weren't that great at it, really enjoyed StarCraft. One guy actually did enjoy it so much, he went from, like, I think he placed, like, Platinum or something, so he was already decent, but then he actually got to Masters by the end of the class.
Dang, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Did he credit the class? Was he public about that? He's like, the reason I got to Masters was because of ZombieGrub.
No. He was actually really humble and just as, like, didn't speak much, so I guess he didn't really tell very many people.
Fair enough. So I guess follow-up question there would be, a lot of people live in Platinum and Diamond on the ladder. I believe that's the most populated section of the ladder. I don't know if that's true for all of them, but definitely for NA last I checked. And I've watched a bunch of people stream StarCraft at the Diamond level. They get up to Diamond 2, they get up to Diamond 1, but then breaking over into Masters for a lot of people seems like a struggle.
Yeah.
Even if they're playing a lot, even if they're devoting themselves to this game and trying to learn from their losses and everything else, but it's really hard to do. What do you think the key is to getting into Masters? Is there one thing? Is it a whole bunch of things? What advice would you give?
It's a whole bunch of things. The amount of people that make it a Masters based off of, like, really badly executed all-ins is still pretty absurdly high. So
that's fair.
It's just a lot of it, I think, is a mental game, honestly. Where where like whenever this happens all the time, whenever you meet the next border, even if it's technically like one division higher than you, it's not, you face if you're Diamond 2 facing a Diamond 1, it's like, I can beat this guy. But suddenly if you're Diamond 1 facing a Masters 3, I feel like there's so much pressure that people put on themselves. Like, oh my God, it's Masters, it's such a big deal. It'd be great. And it's like, well, they're actually not that much better than you, but you think they are. So it's
a
like
psychological aspect.
There's definitely a psychological aspect to it, but it also is just, I think that's where you really do have to know how to improve. Like up until that Diamond, almost reaching a Masters, you could just kind of replicate what you see, but then actually push over that hump is also just, you need to be able to execute practice correctly. Like find the way that practice works for you, and then actually be able to fix specific things, and that will push you over.
So how would you recommend practice for somebody? Does that mean playing ladder, doing the same specific thing over and over, finding a practice partner? How would that work?
In my opinion, it's really boring. You just choose one build per matchup, and then you just practice versus AI until you actually have it down, remembering, not looking at a notepad or anything like that, and then trying to match your benchmarks in the game. That means occasionally dumb losses because someone like 2-base all into you and you were just doing your macro game. Yeah, that's true, but that's the way that I did it, was just working on the build orders and macroing, and then eventually also take into account like what the other person's doing build order wise, because that's what then pushes you even further. But yeah, build orders, that's always what I suggest.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Just having a lot of build orders in your toolbox, I think is how I've heard it referred to. Just being able to say, all right, I scouted my opponent, and this build right here, if I pull it out of the box, it's going to get a lot of stuff done. I can probably win with it, and I can execute it extremely well. Like, that's a good place to be in StarCraft.
Yeah, execution, mechanics will get you to Masters. It's not a lie. It's been proven. Just like that guy that was like, calories in, calories out is how you lose weight, so he ate nothing but like Snicker bars for 5 months. Like, it's the same
Twinkies,
thing.
Yeah.
So I know it can be frustrating,
Yeah.
though. I think there has been people who have complained about that mentality, because most StarCraft players have the mentality. When someone's like, oh, I can't seem to beat this thing, they're like, well, what are your mechanics like? And I understand that can be really frustrating to hear for people who are stuck, but yeah, it's just a matter of actually being able to get that useful practice and not just try and replicate what you see without actually paying attention to what you're doing wrong.
So what kind of stuff fits under mechanics for you?
Hitting the appropriate production timings is like really, really big in my opinion. It's usually what keeps me back. So, for Terran, that's, people generally miss that extra 2 barracks production for minutes, like literal plural minutes, when they really should. And then that's absolutely huge. Constantly sending a unit out to scout before you actually move on to the map is really big too. Oftentimes someone will get to a decent macro game and be like, yeah, I have like 20 more supply than the other person, and then they are moving on the map like blindly. So that's one of the big mechanics. As far as micro mechanics go, I don't know. I don't really care about that much.
Gotcha. But yeah, it's like, sure, you have 20 more supply, but you have roaches and they have all immortals, and you're not going to have a very good time with that.
Yeah, there is also that. You can only be so blind to your opponent's composition.
Right. And I mean, there is that talk. You can get out of bronze, you can get out of silver just by out-macroing your opponent and having more stuff. And even if you don't necessarily counter it officially, I say with quotation marks, if you have more stuff, like Marines technically counter Mutalisks, but if you have 39 Mutalisks and they have 10 Marines, you're still going to win that fight.
Yep.
So just out-macroing is the place to be there. But yeah, up into Masters, it definitely does feel like composition is going to matter, at least a little bit. You just have to know what your opponent is doing, and don't just walk into the meat grinder of, oh, this is a horrible choice to go against what this person is trying to do.
Yeah.
One thing that was really interesting, did you read the Players Tribune, is that what that's called? Article that a laser threw up, I want to say in December?
I'm not sure about that. It was at the Players Lobby? Did Cyril...
Is it the lobby?
I don't
remember what it's called.
I don't remember a laser doing one, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Let me, it's the Players Lobby. Thank you so much. So a laser had a really interesting article in there. I want to say it was in December. Let me see if I can pull this up. Oh, it was actually around Thanksgiving time. So longer than I thought. Time is going fast. But I will toss it in here real quick. So he basically says here, it's a bit of a longer article, but he says that he is a rival of Cyril's. He's an EU Zerg. He played against Cyril for years at this point. Elazer had the goal of becoming the first foreigner to win BlizzCon. And then Cyril did it. And he explains his take on why. And he says, all right, so for me, I was winning games with 2 base all-ins. I was winning games with, the stuff that would work in certain situations, but if the opponent was on my level and knew what was going on, they could shut it down. Whereas Cyril, a couple years ago, really started to work on this macro Zerg style, being able to defend and snipe bases until he gets up to his perfect composition, and then just being patient and going in for the attack when it makes sense, right? And it was hard. Cyril lost a ton of games doing that because he wasn't good at it yet. He lost games in tournaments doing that. And then he got to the point where it was second nature to him. And that is one of the things that propelled him up to winning BlizzCon. And Elazer's just like, that should have been me, but I took the easy way out. I should have been figuring that strategy out along with Cyril, and I never did. And I'm going to get that started now. So I thought that was a really, really interesting insight into Elazer's mind, into how he sees Cyril, how he sees StarCraft, how he sees himself over the last couple of years. I was just wondering, is that something that you have seen? I mean, you've been casting StarCraft for a good long while now. Obviously, you've been casting Cyril for many years, too. Is that something you've noticed about his progression? Do you feel like Elazer's analysis is accurate here?
Yeah, I think it is accurate. It's actually kind of hard to see Cyril's progression, actually, as he wasn't an online hero. Bly, I actually could if I really thought about it and he gave me a timeline, I could probably do exactly what Bly was doing every month because he would play in so many tournaments. But Sarah was already always a little more question mark. Whenever he showed up to tournaments, all I ever heard was that it was macro. When I first cast him years and years ago, it was combating Jaedong's ZVZ macro. So it makes sense that's what he was working on, and it gives him the stronger basis than the people who would learn the flavor of the month all-ins and then eventually be cut out. That's why we push mechanics so much in StarCraft. It's the way to be consistent, at least.
Yeah, definitely true.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that he actually dates back to playing against Jaedong in StarCraft 2. That's amazing.
Yeah, one of the literally the first game I saw of Sarah was in 2013 or 14, because there wasn't the age requirement for DreamHack, and that's also why Raynor was in a DreamHack 2 years ago as well.
Right.
It wasn't until it really became WCS and Blizzard that there was a requirement. But anyways, yeah, he straight up played against Jaedong in 2-1. He got 2-1, but he took a game off of Jaedong at the height of his ZVZ, at the height of the Muta versus Muta era.
Oh gosh.
And I was like, man, this kid's really good. I hope we get to see more of him. But yeah, he wasn't particularly online tournament focused, or even. I don't even think he did that many. I don't think he traveled that much. Just whatever there was a big tournament, he was there.
Yeah, looking through his achievements here on Liquipedia, it does seem like a lot of WCS stuff, a lot of bigger stuff there, but yeah, not a lot of, like you say, the online style tournaments. Yeah, I found this here. It's what year is this? 2013? Yep, 2013. He was put into a group with Jaedong, Crank, and 4GG, which is just, that is brutal, Cyril. That is a rough group. And yeah, he won a single game in the group against Jaedong, it says. So yep, you were right about that.
Yeah. Oh, it's really sick series. I wouldn't forget it.
I'll have to see if I can find a VOD on that one.
Yeah, it's still on my YouTube, so there's definitely ones that exist.
Nice. I'll have to check that out after this for sure. So yeah, good guy. I remember casting from replays of his, and he kind of fit into a couple European Zergs who really loved Ling pressure, who would really just constantly be knocking on the door with Lings, but couldn't really get into the late game with it because they were spending so much larva just on that Ling stuff. And sometimes they'd win, and and most of the time in the larger tournaments they would lose. I always appreciated that style. I felt like Zerg should be more aggressive, even if the meta didn't necessarily call for it. And I've always kind of had that ideological difference with how Blizz designed Zerg in StarCraft 2, where they're kind of supposed to defend, especially in ZVT, and they don't really have as many really good, solid aggressive strategies there. But I don't know. Maybe that's a discussion for another time. But yeah, it's nice to see Serral kind of embrace what Blizzard intends, right? Blizzard really wants Zerg to be defensive. That's what he's at. He's macro style. He's getting a whole ton of bases up, and he's becoming the Swarm. Like a lot of the comments that I see on Twitch, on YouTube are the way he moves his armies. They're constantly rolling about on the creep. Creep spread's amazing. They're reacting perfectly. They're positioning even before the army shows up. There was that great ZVZ with Dark that he played back at BlizzCon. It was either Dark or it was Rogue.
The one that,
was it Rogue?
Yeah, the Lost and Found game.
Yeah, yep, that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's just able to be like, all right, so I can kind of feel, obviously he saw it, but it's almost like he was feeling Rogue come in to go for his fourth base, and he responds perfectly to it, and just that kind of stuff. It's really amazing to see what he's been able to do. I never saw it coming. Like, if you'd asked me who the first foreigner to win BlizzCon would be, I would not have said Serral, but very impressed, very happy that he's been able to pull that off.
Mm-hmm. It's quite impressive. I really think that he has, like, there's not really a weakness to him. I feel like the reason that he is well known for being a defensive macro player is because he is. I mean, I'm not saying he's not, but it's also because people try and kill him so early on. They want to deal with Serral, and yet he still makes all the right decisions, and he's defensive. But if you give him an open playing field, evenly matched, up until 8 or 9 minutes, then he can be the person that has everything running around, constant roach run bys, ling run bys. So he just really plays appropriately to his opponent.
Yep, and yeah, for sure, it takes that. The best players in StarCraft are not the ones who can just do one style. They have to be able to do adaptations to what's going on for the other players, and he is definitely in there. So what do you see for 2019? Do you see possibly another foreigner kind of ascend to this level? Do you see Serral just kind of crushing his way through WCS again? Put on your prognostication hat and tell us what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Serral is going to stay dominant. The thing of why there's been these periods of other foreign domination, looking like they would be the next big one, right? Like Neeb was that 2 years ago. Everyone was like, okay, he's going to be the guy that does it. But he always had this mentality problem. Even when he got better with it, that was always still something that I would be afraid of. I'd be like, oh, Neeb can defeat this person. But if he starts getting tilted, then I don't know, and that's really scary. Serral doesn't have that problem. He also has never complained about burnout, as far as I know, where almost everyone else has. And a lot is his personality, sure, but it's also the way that he studies StarCraft. It's not just grind the ladder, although he does do a lot of that. He also is just thinking about the game a ton. All the things that they say, like these studies that have been done for professional athletes and how often you really are supposed to practice as opposed to conditioning, as opposed to strategizing, and StarCraft players are still in this condition mode where it's like, well, if I don't practice 12 hours a day, then I'm not getting ahead.
Going to fall behind.
Yeah. Or if I'm not laddering 50 games a day. But that does create burnout, understandably so. So that's why Serral, just in my mind, is so easy to predict. Like, he's not going to have the mentality problems. He doesn't seem to falter once things get hard. He actually does better once things get difficult. That's a real sign of a champion. And then he also just has never complained about StarCraft, really. I mean, he kind of is on the memes. He's a funny guy. Funny thing people give him credit for. But you never really legitimately see him be like, yeah, I'm just so frustrated with this match, but I refuse to play it. Or I'm so frustrated with this map that I vetoed it. Like, you don't see those complaints from him. And it just means
balanced complaints.
Yeah, it means like what is actually going to phase this guy? I mean, eventually people are going to match up to him, so maybe it's less dominating than it was last year, but it's still going to be he's still going to be pushing the boundaries of StarCraft, I feel, even if other people are eventually going to catch up to him.
Yeah, that's something they talk about a lot in ball sports. I'm a big NFL fan, big NBA fan, and the team that won the championship the previous season, and if it looks like they're going to repeat, especially, it seems like every night they go into opposing arenas and there's just a bullseye on their back. You're going to get your best game from everybody that you play for the entire season, and that's hard. That's draining to do. And yeah, I feel like Serral's going to be in the same situation. Everybody he plays in WCS is going to have studied him. They're going to have watched his games. They're going to know his tendencies, and they're going to come out there and give their absolute best to try to take him down.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be something that wears on him. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we're going to see a straight WCS sweep again, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if we did as well, just because of all the reasons that you mentioned, just the way that he trains, his mentality, and I think most importantly, I think it's just the tendency, like you said, to just get better as things get harder. If he's in a bad situation in a game, it doesn't snowball to where he ends up falling apart and making a bunch of mistakes and losing. He can respond to it and get back on track pretty quickly, which I don't know if you can teach that. Like, I don't know how you learn that skill. It almost seems like it's an innate thing.
Yeah, it's hard, you know. There's a lot of people who shy away from using the word talent. You know, people who don't want to use the word talent, too. They think that it takes away from all the hard work that they did, and I understand that. But at some point, you just got to admit that people pick up things faster or have that innate ability that maybe it is trainable to be able to recover mentally. I would say that it is trainable, but anything to do with the mind takes a ton of work and effort to improve, and is so many more ups and downs, I feel, when it comes to like mental conditioning than physical conditioning. And if you already have all that locked down, it feels like you're pretty well set up for the competitive side of things.
Yeah, no matter what you're competing in, I agree. So, real quick here, I'm going to just switch tracks. And do you want to talk a little bit about the Banshee tournament? I've just been really interested in this ever since it was announced. And it seems like it's going pretty strong. It seems like we're on number 14.
Yeah, I just finished this weekend. Mm-hmm.
Yep, just finished 14. So you want to tell me any lessons you've learned from setting this up, or any progression you've seen in what you're trying to do with this?
I mean, there hasn't been that much of a learning process. It's a very simple tournament, really, when it comes down to it, and everyone that I've contacted for it, you know, either the admins or the players, have all been very easy to work with. So not really any education going down here, but as far as seeing results, is definitely results. We have a lot of people tuning in, being very supportive. It's fully funded for a year at least, probably more, without me asking for it. I'm not constantly being like, oh, I need more money. I'm actually like, no, we're good guys, and people still get money. What a problem. And then we do see more women be like active and interested in it, joining the Discord channel, which, you know, so I partnered up with them to make sure that there, you know, was not just tournaments that women could compete in, but also an area that they could feel like they could talk about all the problems of being a woman in video game. That can come
just
along
find a
with
community.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's worked out really well. I've seen big growth there, as well as actual active tournaments. You know, not just 4 people showing up all the time, but 8. And then this past one we had, I want to say like 14 people. It was actually really good.
Yeah, looking at the bracket here, looks like a pretty good turnout for sure. Decent race distribution as well. A lot of Zergs. They're in your semifinals and finals, but that's more of a function of StarCraft as a whole, I think, right now, maybe. Have you noticed... have you noticed that the player performance has gotten better over the course of these tournaments? Like, are the finals better executed now than they were when you started, or do you kind of feel like it's maybe about the same as it's been?
I'm pretty sure the players have gotten better. You know, when we first started, I think Telia wasn't really playing StarCraft, and then she got really back into it. So she was like former GM when it started, but then she actually made GM and really started to rise to the ranks again through it. And now she's like, you know, tapering off again. She's not going to play as much. But then you have people who would, you know, she painted the target on her back for being the person who won everyone. And you had QB really start to meet her up to her standards and almost win plenty of times. I think there's been a lot of improvement. And we've even had, you know, people in the Discord be like, yeah, I just reached my highest MMR. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's always good to see people getting better at StarCraft, no matter what level it is. Fantastic. All right, so it looks like that is obviously streamed over on your Twitch stream.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go ahead and tune into that. Just follow ZombieGrub. We'll put a link to her. It's just ZombieGrub on Twitch. Pretty easy to find that way, but we'll put a link in the show notes as well if you want to see really gaming all over the place. It's not just StarCraft, you guys. ZombieGrub also will stream things like Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Are there any other games you're playing right now?
Not really. I'm into some battle royales, but yeah, it's just they're hard to stream actually.
Battle Royale?
Yeah, like physically, like the requirements in the computer. It's a lot more than StarCraft.
Oh, so trying to stream and play like a AAA game is a little difficult.
It's difficult, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Have you tried Apex Legends at all?
No, my brother came in actually to my stream. He occasionally will tune in, and he asked me if I was gonna play it. I thought it was one of those games that was gonna cost like $60, but it's free, so I might eventually play it. It's just that I'm on my laptop while I'm in California, and probably will play pretty crappy.
Yeah, it's hard to get a laptop that can handle that kind of stuff and
Yeah.
stream at the same time, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of Battle Royale have you been into?
I played PUBG when everyone was getting into it because everyone was getting into it and my friends would offer to play with me, but never really did. And then Black Ops was no, I was right. Blackout. They say both.
Isn't Black Ops Call of Duty?
Yeah. Then they say.
So is it Call of Duty Battle Royale?
Yeah, it was. It's the Bruce Meester one. I really feel so stupid.
Somicron, help us.
It's Call of Duty Black Ops Blackout.
Yeah, it's Black Ops.
Blackout is the mode.
Oh, it's both. It's Call of Duty Black Ops Blackout.
Yes, there. I knew that. I was like, these both sound familiar. Which one is it? It's apparently both. Okay, that makes whatever. So that was actually really fun. The way that the movement worked was so, like PUBG's like so trying to be realistic, but then it had a bunch of server problems and it just was gross. And Blackout was so smooth and so much like a better made game. But now Apex seems to have beat them in the kind of more sci-fi department, I guess. Like it's faster paced and not realistic. So Blackout's like in between Apex and PUBG, but it's kind of whatever my friends are playing is the one that I'm into. So
yeah, that's kind of how it is with these games. A lot more fun to play with people, so you're kind of dependent on who's interested in playing with you.
yeah,
Yeah, there have been a couple times that my friends are like, "Hey, come play this." They'll be like, "What was one? Come play Titanfall." And I'm like, "Oh,
yeah.
okay. I've heard some good things about it. Let me kind of wait on this a little bit." And by the time I get around to buying it, they're like, "Oh, yeah, we're done."
yeah.
So, very frustrating.
Yes, it is. It is. And then, I mean, even before that, just people that don't want to, play. There's other stuff that's happening. So the squad disbands, and you never really want to squad up with people online. You do eventually need to talk. And something as simple as me pushing to talk and saying I have extra bandages will get comments about my voice and my gender. So
Yep.
it's not really something I like to play in general.
Yeah, and that is a problem. I mean, definitely. I don't know how much we want to get into this, but I think you've touched on it a couple times here. And definitely being a woman, being a girl in the gaming environment can be definitely problematic. It's heavily male dominated. A lot of those dudes are, we'll put it nicely, complete jerks, especially when females are involved. How do we improve this, I guess, is my question. Do you have any ideas on how to change the culture to where it is more accepting of everybody and it doesn't matter what your sexual orientation or gender is?
Yeah, changing culture is like it's done in inches, right? Like it has to do with in general, like even outside of gaming culture, there's still things to be improved on. To get even further into gaming, and then even further than that into competitive gaming is just. It needs a trickle-down effect eventually, I suppose. Just enough women will actually be openly playing video games, and then awkward teenage males will stop having to show off and be jerks because reasons.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I was talking about adults. Maybe adults can grow up, but if we're trying to get teenage boys to improve their behavior, that seems a lot more difficult.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's I know Overwatch is literally... Like, it is a serious problem in their eyes because, it's a Blizzard product. And they always want the whole, the play fair thing. And it's also a product that requires communication. So they have to fix that somehow, just to actually have fun with the game. And it's something that they're desperately working on trying to improve. I think there's a lot of people just, bringing up kind of call-out culture, just saying, hey, other guys, if you hear some dude being a jerk, you're the ones that have to kind of be like, hey, let's not do this. Because if the girl does it, then... she just gets made fun of more.
It doesn't work. Right.
So that's definitely one of the best ways to do it. I will be far more likely to play a game with one friend, even if the 7 other people are people I don't know. if that one guy friend will be the person that's like, yeah, no, like let's not do that, guys. Like, come on, let's just play the game.
Yeah.
But it
That's
sucks.
good. I mean, totally. But yeah, it is encouraging to hear dudes be the ones to be like, all right, we're better than this. Knock it off. Because yeah, I do think it has to be. You're right. It's not fair. It doesn't make. It's not a cool thing, but definitely does seem to have to be other guys the ones that are.
Yeah.
That are shutting it down.
It's unfortunate, but it also goes like I think there's the same concept even when like taking it away from the gender talk, but also the skill talk, where like I think in Battle Royale it's harder to tell who's actually good at the game and who's bad at the game, especially because it can last like literally 5 minutes. So what did you really learn there? But with StarCraft, for instance, if you played team games in StarCraft, if one person was obviously not as good, they're being carried by their friend or just like doing placements or something like that, one person will be the dick and the other person, if they're like, hey, maybe not. The amount of times that I did that in like Warcraft and the dude who's being a dick was like, okay, fine, but just like, tell him what to do, was actually like quite high. Once you called them out, they were less willing to actually continue it because they didn't have the support, I suppose, of the other people.
Yeah. Well, that's something I've noticed in team games. Like, a reason I like to play StarCraft 1v1 is just because in a team game, it feels like you can play really well and play really perfectly. But then if you lose, it's really easy to blame your teammates, right?
Yes, it
and
is.
really feel like I played that 100% perfectly and didn't make any mistakes. But man, the healer sucked. So yeah, I've definitely seen that in team games. I think that's maybe why League of Legends has more of a toxicity problem than StarCraft does, just because it's more of a team game and people are more willing to call other people out for sucking. Whereas in a 1v1, it's much more difficult to blame your team because you are the team. You can, balance whine and complain about something in the game, but it's harder to really get mad at other people, I feel like.
It absolutely is. You're very rarely mad at that one guy. You might be at the time a complete douchebag to someone because you hated the way that it went down, but then you're not going to stalk that guy. You're just going to be like, well, all Protoss players are stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
You just increase the net, man.
It's negative stereotypes, but it's almost better. Wow, this is very complicated.
That's why I think also to bring it back to the gender thing, why maybe StarCraft could be like in some ways better to get into, especially because even with team games, right, like the amount of communication that we use in team games in StarCraft is actually really, really low. We have, I think one time, because I used to play like a lot of team games when I was younger and worse at the game, but there was like one time where someone was like, why aren't you using voice comms out of hundreds of games? And I was like, you expect me to use StarCraft voice comms? What, like, what's going on here? No one uses it.
Yeah, that's really weird. Yeah.
So it can be if someone's having trouble getting into Overwatch because at the highest competitive play you need to be communicating, then StarCraft is where you're going to get that need to be competitive without feeling like you're lacking because every time you go to voice comms you're yelled at for being a girl.
Yeah, a little bit easier to kind of keep that on the down low, which avoids the harassment.
Yeah.
So in general, if you're listening to this, let's do a better job of calling out other people for poor behavior, like no matter what it is, right? But especially if they're attacking somebody or harassing somebody because they don't have a penis. It's not a big deal. It's not something that we need to encourage. Let's just go ahead and be the ones to be the change in the gaming community, no matter what it is, and let's try to improve things. How about that? Good.
Yeah.
Done.
Good stuff.
Yeah. All right. So we're running low on time here. We said to keep it for an hour. We're about there. Is there anything else you wanted to plug or anything else you wanted to discuss in your world?
Oh boy. I mean, there's some, heavier topics certainly, about casting in general and whatnot, but unless you have anything specific, then not really. Not on the forefront of my mind.
Now I'm so curious. What are these heavy topics in casting? Maybe we don't have to get into it now, but is there something we can touch on just for a couple minutes here?
Yeah, well, geez. I mean, there's so many things, like how to make a living, the difference between StarCraft, casting and then other esports casting, and then how many opportunities there are. Also, how do you improve at casting and appealing to the public's reception of you, and how it feels like sometimes, the public is, still has nostalgia too much, maybe a little bit too much for nostalgia. They just like how things were and maybe not the new things that are happening. I mean, there's...
Oh, I hear that, yeah.
There's a ton of stuff, really. I'm like, the people were like, you have anything else you want to talk about? And I was like, well, how much do you want to talk about, really depressing stuff?
A lot. I love talking about depressing stuff. Give me controversial topics rather than something we all agree on, for sure.
Yeah, and there's definitely controversial stuff, but then at the end of the day, it's like, especially for my position, even if I bring up all the things I could gripe about, at the end of the day, StarCraft really is probably the best community, with the best casters, and still with the willingness to, have those openings for new people. There are still people coming up. Neuro recently, right, he's been on like 1,000 subs for a while now, doing well with the Twitch front page stuff. You have a really big YouTube, which I think a lot of times people would be like 4 years ago, they'd be like, there's no room whatsoever for new people. So as much as I can gripe and bring up, controversial topics, at the end of the day, I actually think that it's a very blessed esport.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it definitely has the best community of players, the best player base, the best casters. Although I miss Red Eye. I wish Red Eye would cast StarCraft again. But otherwise, I don't have any complaints.
Oh, there you go.
So good. All right. Well, we'll bring you back. We'll discuss some more of those depressing topics, maybe sprinkle in some more of the positive aspects of the game, and we'll make that happen. So, all right. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us on the Falcon Paladin Hour. Again, please check out ZombieGrub on Twitch. She's on there a lot. She's very entertaining. She does a lot of different stuff. Again, not just StarCraft, including Final Fantasy, which is pretty cool, and these Battle Royale games. And on YouTube as well. Again, link in the show notes. So yeah, that's going to be it. Thanks again for joining us. Take care of yourself, ZombieGrub, and we will catch you next time.
All right. Thank you.